And let me set this up. Hello, welcome to Freedom. No, wait. Now it's I Need Living Conversations, 91st session of our conversations. I am with Sacred Blue Heron Woman, straight from Indianola, Oklahoma. I am Julian Catari from Jalapa, Veracruz. And today we have a conversation where we start going down the branch or up the branch of containment, the contain branch of the great principle, that which must contain, sustain, govern, and govern what else? I still don't remember.
Create, constitute, govern, sustain, and contain.
There you go. Create and constitute. That's all. So we did like 10 shows or more, maybe on one of the branches.
Yeah.
And this is our start with the second branch, the contain branch. So as I understand it, everything that exists has a sort of containment. And just today I was working on the booklet where the membrane is mentioned, the cell membrane as a principal thing, as a main kind of thing. So that's what I think about contain.
Right.
You create that membrane, and then that contains everything inside of it, and that's where you get life. But here we're gonna let you, Ingrid, do the enlightenment on what containment is. So please take us there.
Well, we're gonna start with words from the old ones first, of course.
Okay, words from the old ones.
They want to say what you all humans call the Big Bang is the story of creation that we gave to Ingrid. And since we went through the story of creation, we have given her more to add to it. So next week we'll go back to the story of creation.
Okay.
We want you to know that every one of your body's atoms is traceable to the Big Bang, or us singing each other into being. So you are stardust, or brought to life by us. Before any of you humans could have seen anything in our space were seen, photons had to travel unimpeded across this vast space of us, as carriers of our songs, our singing. So the spot where each photon began its cross-cosmos journey is where it smacked into the last electron that it would ever stand in its way. And as more and more photons whirl out of the way of smacking into an electron, they create an expanding surface. And this surface is where all atoms in the universe have been born and are still being born. And this is us. So an electron joins an atomic nucleus, and a little pulse of energy of us in the form of a photon soars away into the wild red yonder. Where matter accumulates, the strength of gravity grows, enabling more and more matter together. And so ordinary matter is what you all humans are made of, and all your animals and everything, but that's what your scientists call it, ordinary matter. Mm-hmm. Ordinary matter means that this matter has gravity and interacts with light. That's simply it. Why do your scientists call it ordinary matter? Because they've discovered a dark matter, a mysterious substance that has gravity and yet does not interact with light in any known by you humans way. Your scientists say that it has gravity. It's a mysterious pressure in a vacuum of space that acts in the opposite direction of gravity while it still has gravity. So they can't figure this out. But what they do know is that you ordinary matter beings need the help of dark matter, because without this dark matter, there would be no galaxies, there would be no stars, there would be no planets, no people, no animals, birds, etc. Your scientists say that the dark matter's effects are real. They just don't know what dark matter is. And that they also know that dark matter exerts gravity to which ordinary matter responds. So what we'd like to say is that this dark matter is us. It's our consciousness, it's our mind. And every great spiritual tradition has known that the entire cosmos is consciousness. The entire cosmos is dark matter outside of what your human scientists have found. So then every generation of humans has personified this consciousness, which brings you the pantheon of gods and deities out of every culture. And now that you enabled our dark matter, our consciousness, to take humanistic form, you could then worship it as something existing separate outside of you. And so religions came into being, with each religion believing that their personification of consciousness or dark matter or us is the only truth to be had, and everyone must believe in this truth. But originally, you humans knew that consciousness was an integral part of you. That consciousness or spirit or dark matter has to be rooted in energy, in the photons that are sailing away. And then that energy, spirit first, has to be rooted in the photon sailing away, and then the energy of the photon sailing away has to be rooted in matter form. And you humans knew that since there is this unified field of consciousness or dark matter or spirit, and that we or it governs the movements of the universe and everything in it, then we are part of every single form that exists. You humans knew that this consciousness or spirit in you is a small part of the greater consciousness, that like those individual cells make up your body, it is the consciousness within you that makes up the larger spirit of existence, the dark matter. And yet you humans have all forgotten this and continue to obtusely try to forget it. So we, consciousness, mind, or spirit, or dark matter, divide into individual parts to become you and all the things of our world. We, consciousness, spirit, root ourselves in every single individuated form on the planet. So when you say aloha and know that it means that the breath of God is in our presence now, you can practice every day receiving, not taking, receiving a breath from us, taking us in, your dark matter lovers, with pleasure. And as you exhale, you're allowing us to take you in sheer absolute pleasure. And as you practice breathing this way, your lives will transform, and you will find yourself coming into an orgasmic form of living, of being in love with life, as you know you're receiving the ultimate lover and being received by the ultimate lover. With pleasure. We want you to know that. Pleasure is, that's one of the co-commitments, was fun, right? Now we need to add the word pleasure, because pleasure is, you humans love to abdicate pleasure, thinking you're going to gain enlightenment quicker by abdicating all forms of pleasure.
Right, and that's such a crucial turnaround of the mind and of the spiritual mindset. To me, is one of the key things I'd like to point out and search to be congruent with in my life.
So on that note, now we'll shift to the contain. So the great principle, the original statement was that we all ask the question, is there really a God? And science has discovered this unified field of consciousness that they call the great principle. Right. And the scientific definition of the word principle is that it must create, constitute, govern, sustain, and contain all within itself. So now we're going to talk about
containing.
So One of the first things to be noted about our home sphere, our Earth, is that it is not a sphere. It is more exactly what a geometrician would call an oblate spheroid, with a faint tendency toward a pear shape, a kind of a fat doorknob that's gently flattened at the spindle poles. In fact, you can't define its shape precisely, for it's irregular in detail and constantly changing. Like an animal, our home spheroid stirs in its sleep, it breathes, it grows, its wounds heal, its juices circulates, its skin metabolizes, its nerves crackle with vital messages, it even rumbles with internal gas, and it dreams and it itches a little, and through its inhabitants it feels self-conscious. So our Earth, then, with all this, creates a magnetism, and it has a strong primary field geared to its axis of rotation, with various overlapping lesser components that shift constantly. So these residual fields move irregularly westward at an average rate of more than a mile a month, completing a full revolution about every 1,600 years. So our Earth's moving core and mantle exert a force upon each other. The flowings of earthly materials of different densities also create cryptic patterns of subnormal and supernormal gravity on the surface. Gravity, one of the great mysteries, we can understand it better as whirlpools in the calm ocean of emptiness that lies between the stars. So the space engineers describe our gravity field as a funnel-shaped and 4,000 miles deep. Of course, it's an oversimplification, because gravity isn't the same everywhere, and it isn't really literally whirling, and it goes far beyond 4,000 miles. But seeing it as a funnel-loid shape kind of gives us a representation. So what is our mantle? What is our Earth's magnetic mantle that contains us? It's called the Van Allen belts.
It's like a magnetic field.
Yeah, that's our magnetic shield. Is the Van Allen belts that protect us, that give us our mantle. And then we have our sun that we orbit around, which is also a big magnet. So during solar minimum, the sun's magnetic field, like our Earth's, resembles that of an iron bar magnet with giant closed loops near the equator and open fields near the poles. Scientists call such fields a dipole, and the sun's dipolar field is about as strong as a refrigerator magnet, and the Earth's magnetic field is 100 times weaker than that. So during solar maximum, and we can take the years 2000 and 2001 are good examples of solar maximum, there are spots that pepper the face of the sun, and sunspots are places where intense magnetic loops, hundreds of times stronger than the ambient dipole field, poke through the photosphere. Sunspot magnetic fields overwhelm the underlying dipole, and as a result, the sun's magnetic field near the surface of the star becomes tangled and complicated. The sun's magnetic field isn't confined to the immediate vicinity of our star, because the solar wind carries it through the solar system. Out among the planets, we call the sun's magnetic field the interplanetary magnetic field, or IMF. And because grandfather sun rotates once every 27 days, the IMF has a spiral shape named the Parker spiral, after the scientist who first described it. So these, when grandfather sun's hurling his coronal mass ejections at us, this is what these are, these solar winds. Earth has a magnetic field too. It forms a bubble around our planet called the magnetosphere, which deflects these solar wind gusts. So Earth's magnetic field and the IMF come into contact at the magnetopause, a place where the magnetosphere meets the solar wind. And if the IMF, the interplanetary magnetic field, points south, then the IMF can partially cancel Earth's magnetic field at the point of contact. When it is south, that is opposite of the Earth's magnetic field, the two fields link up. And then you can follow a field line from Earth directly into the solar wind, or from the solar wind to Earth. And this opens a door through which energy from the solar wind can reach Earth's atmosphere, and this is what causes the aurora borealis, the northern lights. So these southern winds herald widespread auroras triggered by solar wind gusts or coronal mass ejections that are able to inject energy into our planet's magnetosphere. And they also ionize the top of our field, and they cause radio blackouts, these coronal mass ejections. They also create amino acids that we then absorb through our skin and breathing and everything. So our atmosphere around us is what contains us. And NASA has theorized that from Earth's surface to 14.5 kilometers up is the troposphere. This is where our weather happens. It's also the most dense layer. It's the thickest around the equator and it's thinnest at the poles. The next layer up is the stratosphere, and it extends to 50 kilometers out into space. And this is where our ozone layer is. The mesosphere is next, and this is where meteors burn up, creating the shooting stars that we see. Next is the thermosphere, where satellites orbit and the auroras happen. And then next is the ionosphere, with an abundance of electrons and ionized atoms and molecules. It's a mixture of ionized gases, nitrogen, oxygen, argon, and more, and they're ions and free electrons. The ionosphere is plasma. It's formed due to solar activity and cosmic rays, magnetosphere particle, and other processes that have their origin both in outer space and our magnetic mantle, the Van Allen belts. Because of the conductive nature of the ionosphere, it works as a refractive media for the electromagnetic waves coming from the Earth's surface. So we are covered with a relatively thick blanket of low temperature plasma that reflects electromagnetic waves and creates with the Earth's surface a resonant cavity, a waveguide where resonance events take place. And the primary source of electromagnetic waves in our atmosphere is lightning activity. On the average, a lightning discharge is happening approximately 40 to 50 times every second around our globe, creating a brief, powerful living radio antenna that emits a spectrum of frequencies. So solar activity and the moon's phases all influence also these resonance events. And these events are Mother Earth's pulse then. These events have been called the Schumann resonance after Otto Schumann, the German man who discovered them. Due to solar radiation, individual electrons, and this is kind of scattered, maybe kind of scattered because like my squirrel, I gathered nuts from all over the place. It's kind of hard to weave it together. So due to solar radiation, individual electrons are dislodged from otherwise neutral gas atoms in this region and create positively charged ions. This makes the ionosphere conductive and able to trap electromagnetic waves. So between the Earth's surface and the ionosphere is a cavity containing a total electrical charge of what they call 500,000 coulombs. So there's this vertical current flow between the ground, our Earth, and the ionosphere. The atmosphere has a resistance of 200 ohms and a voltage potential of 200,000 volts. So the 40 to 50 times lightning every second is 2,000 lightning storms at any given point of time. So what does all this mean? It means there's a great deal of electrical activity between the surface of our Earth and the ionosphere. Some of this is in the form of standing waves of electricity, the Schumann resonances. So what are the resonances? Well, each lightning burst creates an electromagnetic wave that begins to circle the Earth in this cavity between the Earth's surface and the ionosphere. And some of the waves, if they have just the right wavelength, combine and increase in strength to create a Schumann resonance. The sweet spot for creating this resonance is when the wave is as long or longer than the circumference of the Earth. And this is an extremely low frequency wave of up to 100,000 times lower than the lowest frequency radio waves used to send signals in our AM and FM radios. As this wave flows around the Earth, it hits itself again in such a way that the crests and troughs of the wave are aligned and act in resonance with each other to increase the original signal. Scientists speculate that the waves are related to the electrical activity in the atmosphere. So the base atmospheric electromagnetic resonance frequency is 7.83 hertz. This means that our atmosphere is continually resonating with a radio frequency of 7.83 hertz, along with progressively weaker harmonics at around 14.3, 20.8, and so forth. And these oscillations are again called the Schumann resonance. The amount of resonance fluctuates as the ionosphere becomes more or less dense, and this depends on the amount of solar radiation striking it. At night, the part of the ionosphere that's in the Earth's shadow thins out. These resonances are affected by the world's 3 lightning hotspots, which are in Asia, Africa, and South America. They're seasonal and they follow a day-night cycle. So the peaks of radio signal strength at the Schumann resonance follow a constantly shifting but reasonably predictive schedule. And for the last few days, cosmic energies have been coming in at such strength that the recording station in Russia has blacked out their computers.
Oh, wow.
Off the charts.
Yeah, the sun has been grueling down here.
Yeah. So we're going to go back to our magnetic field, known as our geomagnetic field, is the magnetic field that extends from our Earth's interior out into space, where it interacts again with the solar wind, which is a stream of charged particles emanating from the sun. This magnetic field is generated by electrical currents due to the motion of convection currents that are a mixture of molten iron and nickel from our Earth's outer core. These convection currents are caused by heat escaping from the core, which is called a geodynamo. So the magnitude of our magnetic field ranges from 25 to 65, whatever. I don't know what I can't, but it's represented by a field of a magnetic dipole that's currently tilted at an angle of about 11 degrees with respect to our Earth's rotational axis. If there were an enormous spark magnet placed at that angle through the center of the Earth, then the North Geomagnetic Pole actually represents the South Pole of the Earth's magnetic field, and similarly the South Geomagnetic Pole corresponds to the North Pole because it's opposite. So as of 2015, the North Geomagnetic Pole was located on Ellesmere Island in Nunavut, Canada. The magnetosphere is the region above the ionosphere that is defined by the extent of our Earth's magnetic field in space. It extends several tens of thousands of kilometers into space, protecting us from the charged particles of the solar wind and cosmic rays that would otherwise strip away our upper atmosphere, including our ozone layer that protects us from harmful ultraviolet radiation. So again, our internal magnetism creates a region around our planet known as the magnetosphere. While several planets in our solar system have magnetospheres, we have the strongest one of all the rocky planets. Our magnetosphere is a vast comet-shaped bubble and has played a crucial role in our planet's habitability. Life on our Earth developed and continues to be sustained under the protection of this magnetic environment. The magnetosphere shields our home planet from the solar and cosmic particle radiation, as well as erosion by the solar wind, the constant flow of charged particles streaming from grandfather sun. And our magnetosphere is a part of a dynamic interconnected system that responds to solar, planetary, and interstellar conditions. And it all starts deep inside our Earth, deep inside us as well. As electrically charged molten iron turns far below our Earth's surface within the planet's outer core, it generates a magnetic field large enough to extend far out into space. On the sun-facing side of our Earth, the magnetic field is compressed by the constant bombardment of the solar wind. The magnetosphere extends some 6 to 10 times the radius of our Earth. The side of the magnetosphere facing away from the sun, which would be the night side, stretches out into an immense magnetotail which fluctuates in length and can measure hundreds of our Earth's radii, extending far past our moon's orbit. So every few years, a scientist named Larry Newitt of the Geological Survey of Canada goes hunting. He grabs his gloves, parka, a fancy compass, hops on a plane, and flies out over the Canadian Arctic. Not much stirs among the scattered islands and sea ice, but Newitt's prey is there, always moving, always shifting, always elusive. His quarry is Earth's north magnetic pole. At the moment, it's located in northern Canada, about 600 kilometers from the nearest town called Resolute Bay, population of 300, where a popular t-shirt reads, "Resolute Bay isn't the end of the world, but you sure can see it from here." Newitt stops there for snacks and supplies and refuge when the weather gets bad, which is often, he says. Scientists have long known that our magnetic pole moves, but James Ross located the pole for the first time in 1831 after an exhausting Arctic journey, during which his ship got stuck in the ice for 4 years. Can you imagine? I can't. No one returned until the next century. In 1904, Ronald Amundsen found the pole again and discovered that it had moved at least 50 kilometers since the days of Ross. So the pole kept going during the 20th century north at an average speed of about 10 kilometers per year, lately accelerating to 40 kilometers per year, said this scientist Larry Newitt. At this rate, it will exit North America and reach Siberia in a few decades.
Right.
I think this, if I remember right, this was written about 10 years ago. So keeping track of the North Magnetic Pole is Newitt's job. We usually go out and check its location once every few years, he says, but we'll have to make more trips now that it's moving so quickly. Our magnetic field is also changing in other ways too, because compass needles in Africa, for instance, are drifting about 1 degree per decade. And globally, the magnetic field has weakened 10% since the 19th century. And that's all I could glean about what contains us.
Well, and that sounds like the start of it. From things I gather is how something that's created inside is what balances and protects us from the outside and the external, and how in this autopoiesis mindset, life creates the forces that are destructive, and yet at the same time it creates the membrane or the containments that are the boundaries of life.
Right.
Thanks to which, I mean, so life is a contained thing. That's an interesting. It's not an infinite. It has to be contained, or at least biological life. I don't know. I guess everything can be called life because everything's part of it. And
But yeah, it has to be. I mean, because it would just fly apart otherwise. It wouldn't. Remember, what the old one said about when matter condenses with gravity, it collects more matter. So that matter has to then be contained. Otherwise, it'll just fly apart.
right. So as you go further down this containment road, are we gonna hit cells again? Are we going to touch other areas, or is it just kind of on the planet scale?
I think this is where I'm going to bring astrology in, astronomical astrology, because one thing I've discovered with this is that Jupiter's electromagnetic field, magnetosphere, is so large it protects us from even more stuff further out. So we're the third rock from the sun, right? It's Venus, Mercury, and us, and then Mars, and so forth. I forget the exact, but so.
Well, for Mars, you have Jupiter and then Saturn.
So as I'm coming to understand this, and understand this is all theory, as everything else in the world is, we'll discuss how we'll start first to discuss the gradient, the yin yang gradient created by Venus and Mercury together, and how that led to the Mayan calendar and the Cherokee calendar of giving birth to beauty. And then the next one out, I haven't figured out yet whose Mars partner is. Every planet has a partner, either Pallas Athene or it's Ceres. But then we'll go to, so we'll kind of skip Mars until I get infinite ancient wisdom about that. But then we'll go out to Saturn and Jupiter, because together then they hold this magnetic field.
Right.
So of containment. And then beyond that, it would be Uranus and Neptune. And beyond that, it would be Pluto and maybe Eris. I don't.
Ceres, yeah.
So.
The deplaneted planets.
Yeah. So. So we'll just, but what we're going to do from here forth is we'll go back next week to the creation story, an expanded creation story that gives us the gradient.
Already.
That includes he, she, male and female. And then we'll talk more about how this immense, enormous dark matter power with light refracts into constituting us. We'll give a clearer picture of the elemental, the eight forces. We'll talk. I don't know. We'll see how it flows, and at the same time, then we'll come back to the contain branch and talk about the fields of Mercury and Venus that they create as they dance together, and Jupiter and Saturn and Uranus and Neptune.
So then the ancient ones are always going to send us a message, I guess, and they help connect all that to our daily lives, to our to the teachings that we must receive. I want to share with folks that the recent teachings of this summer are to me, they go around the becoming more open to pleasure, understanding that, and kind of revolutionizing this. It's kind of like a revolution, right? It's like that's old kind of scheme, and then you have to turn it around, and so it happens that was turned around, and this is how it's must be. I mean, you can't link spirituality and enlightenment to a lack of pleasure and to a total sobriety purist kind of state.
Right.
I mean, becoming purified, having these initiations is a good thing. Many times it's the start of a kind of a process of awakening.
Right.
But then there's something beyond that, and here we are showing,
right,
and sharing how that works. That's why also it's called I Need Living Conversations, because we're sharing from a living experience. We're living this wisdom. We're not just theorizing and hitting the bookstore or as my dad would say, these are he would criticize that decolonialists of library decolonialists, right? They will all be so good at speaking about colonization and how we should be how we're colonized, but then they wouldn't do anything else and just go to the library and speak about it, and they'd be wearing suits, and as soon as they would get some kind of job, some kind of a government, they would totally take it.
Yeah.
And there's no congruency, there's no living it, there's no living that wisdom. So here we're living that wisdom, and as you can see, folks, living that wisdom also means that we're not experts. I love that you always reminded us of that. There's no expert in this. There's no expert in the new.
There's no room for experts, because if you're expert, you're closed.
Right. Exactly.
You think you know everything about everything. So we're experimenters.
So that's actually the true, if you want to call it, scientific mindset. That is the only real scientific mindset, where you're always open to find evidence that you were wrong or that what you have theorized was either wrong or imprecise or imprecise or
just inaccurate and incomplete,
insufficient to help to really describe or be a good part of a wholesome construction of a life, right? A wholesome flow of life with nature, and so many paradigms need to be deconstructed and revolutionized. So
yeah,
we're at this point, and so I guess we are going to continue on the containment next week.
No, we're going to go back to the creation.
Okay, a creation story. Okay.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
So, and then from there, we'll probably bounce around we might go down the creation branch to reintroduce the ontogeny of a human embryo, because then the 8 fields I'm finding the 8 fields that create everything in the embryo are really directly related to the Bhagavad, and I'm still working on that, but it's coming.
Okay. Well, sounds very exciting. I don't think there's a need to. Whoa, no, we don't have a live viewers. That we changed today's session to Thursday. Normally we have it Wednesdays. Next week we'll be right in schedule. We changed it last week because of a solstice ceremony, and So next week, Wednesday at 8:30 Central Standard Time. If you want to watch it live, otherwise most of our viewers get this on the recorded. And by the way, Ingrid, there's now about 4 videos that are above 1,000 views.
Wow, cool.
So it's not just one now; it's it's about 4 of them.
Oh,
So
cool.
people are watching this, and we get very few comments from time to time. It would be really nice if somebody would drop a comment or an opinion or a question or anything to make us to interact with us. That would be amazing.
Right. So along that line, what I'd like to say is add aloha at BWD Aloha Ainidao Living Community de Hesa. We're not proselytizing for members like churches are.
Okay.
We're not competing and proselytizing. We're just here living.
Right.
We're just here doing. We're just here being. We're shifting. We're actually not. We're shifting from being human doings to human beings that listen, and then we do in Wu Wei, effortless living. We also issue invitations, but by no means is that proselytizing, searching for members. We're just being and doing.
Yeah,
and if you want to join us, we invite you to join us. However, it doesn't matter if you join us or not. We're just being and doing, and we will continue being and doing. Right.
So that's so lovely, and that's so truthful, and obviously that's not gonna appeal to the masses. Rather, if it's two big, huge beings that join, I can totally feel that the power, the energy it's just so different from anything else. Anything else, there can be a whole bunch of people, and yet it's no growth is there. And here I could totally see how just one person is going to bring just this whole new dimension of growth and of expansion. So that's why it needs to, little is a lot. Little is a lot, and a lot is a little. And you, human being, listening to this, you have no idea how big you are and how powerful you are. It's just a matter of tapping into that. And it's up to you to do that. We're not going to push you, and we can invite you to come into the house, but we can't lay a trail of cookies to do that or anything like that. Alrighty. Well, thank you, Ingrid, and thank you, everyone. So should I stop the show? Anything else?
Nope, that's it. Stop the live stream.
Well, see you next week.
Yeah.